Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for being here today. And I'm going to ask Vice Chair Washburn if he will open us up with a word of prayer.
Madam Chair. Our Father in heaven, we are deeply grateful for all you do for us. Thank you for your grace to us, and thank you for the privilege of living in the great state of Georgia and the privilege of serving in the Georgia House of Representatives. We ask that you would bless our efforts today with fruit as you see fit, give us wisdom and insight, and bless us as we do this work. And we pray, I pray as a follower of Christ in his name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for the privilege being in the state of Georgia and serving. We are grateful to have our chairman, Chairman Alan Powell, with us this morning. Chairman Powell, would you like to say something? On this week before Christmas, we should have others joining us via virtual. Our Chairman Jason Ridley should be joining, Representative Shelley Hutchinson, Representative Misha Maynor, and others will be joining us by Zoom. So today we're here to hear from the Secretary of State's office about some recent changes that have occurred in the state's professional relicensure system. We want to know where you have been, how'd you get to where we are today, and where we are going tomorrow. We have members of professional associations that have joined us here today as well. So thank you all for coming. Mr. Sterling.
Start by saying thanks for allowing us to have this opportunity to walk through how we got to where we are in the modernization initiative. And licensing is a wildly complex issue. We bring in about $38 million in revenue over the 41 different boards that we work with to administratively support, because the boards make the decisions and do the enforcement actions and do those kind of things. Our staff does the investigations, inspections, and provide the analysts to review the licensure renewals and applications. We have been using a system from Systems Automation for 22 years now called EMLO. It is towards the end of life. It sits on a data center. It's older technology. And one of the things when I was made interim director in 2021, I'm still interim director, was having an outside company come in and review our processes and procedures. One of the alarming things that we saw was the average licensee, new licensee, had 6 documented what we call touches, emails, phone calls, etc., that were documented into the MLO system with each analyst for every new license. That is extremely inefficient. And the situation was they had no real insight into where their license stood. They had to talk to a human being or had to have an interaction with an analyst to get to that point. So one of the things we decided we had to do was move to a new system that provided a dashboard that would allow the individual licensee to kind of see where they were in the process so they could do the stuff themselves. And we have what I call the binary uploads, that an analyst wouldn't look at a licensee's application until they uploaded the stuff that was binary, their driver's license, their graduation, their transcript, all those things that would be there, and they could see what they were uploading. Now, what we did was we leveraged state contracts. Let me back up one thing. When the Secretary's office was given $150 million to roll out the new voter system, we came in under budget. And in the 2022 budget, the legislature allowed us to redirect, and through the action of the budget, redirect about $4 million from that remaining money to go towards this modernization project. So we didn't have to allocate any new money. It was money that we already had for another purpose, but we came in under budget, so we had that money available. So we used state contracts, the Carasoft contract and the CAI contract with the technology contract, to go to get 3 separate vendors to do a modernization across the entirety of our organization, which included the voter registration system, right now the professional licensing system, and potentially the corporation system, which is also end of life, which we have a budget request in for y'all right now for $3 million. And I just slightly mentioned it would be a good thing to have as a capital project. So we initially started with the professional licensing divisions as our starting point, but because of the world in which we live and the situation surrounding our issues with our existing registration system, the voter registration system became the priority. And that's what we put the A team and most of the resources towards. We continue with discovery on the professional licensing system, but we use most of our resources to get that done there. So once that was essentially completed, we could put their A team back onto the professional licensing. So after, I'll go through this let's see, I almost forgot my technology. So the plan was to increase customer satisfaction through enhanced professional business constituent access to easier, faster, and more transparent processes. That's the dashboard process. It was also to improve overall efficiency and effectiveness through automation of manual processes and eliminating redundant and duplicative processes using this technology. Because oftentimes analysts would do the same things manually 2 or 3 times. Intake would touch it, analysts would touch it, executive directors would touch it. It was just those kind of processes that had been built up over 40 years of doing things a certain way. The other thing we had to take care of was replacing the end-of-life system with a modern, scalable, resilient, and secure technology. One of the things I was talking to the chairman about earlier was the fact that we have this on the FedRAMP, which is the same. And since there's a lot of personal identifying information, social security numbers, driver's license, education material, and sometimes enforcement activities that are done, we have it on the FedRAMP, which is basically a protocol that says this is the most secure system on the cloud. This is what's used by the Department of Defense and our intelligence agencies. And it operates a little bit different than a regular cloud, which has been one of the issues we run into. So why goals? And goals, by the way, we had a contest internally. 2 people came up with the same name. We love acronyms. Goals is the Georgia Online Application and Licensing System. I still owe both of them gift cards that I'm paying for out of my own pocket for being the winners on that one. And I know Wanda was one of them, so I know she's listening. So this is the introduction and the benefits of going to a goals-based system like we have. It replaces a legacy system with a new upgraded platform, Salesforce. And Salesforce will always be being improved. We don't have to go ask for them to do stuff. A lot of government contracts in the past is you build it and it kind of sits there and it just stays static. You have to go and really drag new things out of them. They do 3 upgrades a year automatically in the Salesforce platform. It's in their contract, which is a state contract, like I said, through Carasoft, which was bid out in, I think, 2019. It takes away a lot of the manual tasks with self-service features and functionalities. It lets the licensee have a lot more visibility on their application and their renewal status than had been in the previous system. It allows for improved alerts and notifications, including SMS, which means you can get text messages, which is the way most people who are going to be new licensees, especially who are younger, get their information. They don't always check emails the way that maybe people with gray hair like me do. It reduces processing times because it cuts down on the analysts having to review things. And it facilitates the online payment options for fees and fines. So before we had to exit the system to another system to make your payments. It would be tracked, but it was not the cleanest way in the world to do that. So after a lot of work, on October 3rd, we launched the first rollout. In that, there was 150,000 licensees and facilities and 77 partners, which includes schools and associations. And one of the big issues we have is that each profession is managed by a unique set of rules and legal requirements. That adds a lot of complexity. We can't do a one-size-fits-all because each trade, each profession has different rules and different laws on how they have to be reviewed and what has to be uploaded. So in the first one, we had the Board of Veterinary Medicine, athlete agents, auctioneers and commissions, cosmetology and barbers, immigration assistants and librarians, the trauma scene waste management, water and wastewater treatments, funeral directors and embalmers, funeral establishments, athletic trainers, massage therapy, occupational therapy, and physical therapy, which I know we'll talk about some today, private detective security services, used motor vehicle dealers and used motor vehicle parts dealers, and long-term care facility administrators and podiatry. Now, so far, this is by the numbers. This was as of close of business yesterday. We have had 20,875 unique logins. 1,590 new licenses have been issued through the system. 4,844 individuals have had their licenses renewed, the majority of which are physical therapy. And to get to this point, we had 138,000 hours of development. We had over 16,000 hours of testing and over 14,000 hours of training. And of course, these are man hours. So we had several people getting trained on these things. And this is both for the vendors and for our side. We have 30 change agents that are internal to our organization. And they're sort of the people that internally they would go to who understand the systems. We've trained 81 staff so far, including regular PLB staff, the call center, and then the support teams that work with them. We've also trained 101 of the external board members. And so far, we brought in over $1 million through this new system, $1,009,000 as of last night. So it is working right now. Now, there is license management changes we want to talk about first. This is what's different. For the users, they can update their contact information record themselves, account verification, a new password they're going to have to do. They can set alert and notification preferences, and they have the visibility on their dashboard into the new license and application renewal status. For entities, they can update their contact information record, security verification, and new password, set the alert preferences. Owners and employees had to access accounts separately. You can't use a single email for an entire organization, and entity email requirement for multiple locations. That's a very different thing as well. For analysts and internal support teams, a new system of record, it's a new terminology and new processes for them too. So they're learning internally the same way the applicants are going to be learning, like they were with any new system. And I told my team this, I said, even when we launch this with all this testing and all these hours, I guarantee you one thing, something is going to screw up. Because when you have thousands of individuals hitting your system differently than you did in UAT, which is our testing, we're gonna find something. And if we didn't, I know it's there. It's just a matter of time. It's with every new rollout. That's just the reality of it. And we did a lot of communication on the front end saying, expect some delays. There's going to be issues because it's a new system, and we don't know what you're going to discover by hitting it from your 1982 IBM PC or your new Apple. So that's the kind of situation we knew was going to happen. So we set up in advance sort of how do we deal with technical issue management? And that's what we do. We have twice daily triage meetings for priority and severity assessment. And I'll go over the different levels of severity in a second. We have a daily issue correction and testing, and there's a weekly fixed release, normally every Thursday, where they will do what we call a release to address any of the issues that they've been able to code to and address over that previous week. Issues to date, we've closed 750. Now, these things go all the way from what we call a P1. A P1 is a stopper. A P1 basically means the workflow stops because there is an issue at this point. A P2 means there is a workaround that can be done. So it's important, but we have a physical workaround. P3 and P4, which aren't listed here, are mainly cosmetic or language changes and those kind of things. So they're all included in this. We've closed 750 altogether. We have 238 that are open right now, but we're down to 31 P1s. And they're still listed as P1s because that's what they started with, but everything is flowing through now with the exception of, I think, one or two. Then we had a random hotfix. A hotfix is something we can do very quickly. And on October 3rd, we launched. By October 5th, we discovered the document scanning functionality wasn't operating properly, but we got that fixed by October 7th. So that's been 2.5 months now. And that was a quick hotfix that we were able to get done. So we had a plan to address these things, and we have addressed these things. Now, here's the reality of user experience issues that we couldn't know until users started using it. The login instructions. The language, we had language that was confusing. We was to change that, but it was making them initiate activity incorrectly. Yeah, so that we wrote it in a way that we thought meant one thing, and other human beings read it, and they read it as being something else. So we fixed that. The account verification, the logic for verification accounts didn't match data from the legacy systems. And this is in part two different things. We're verifying people differently, but when we did the data migration, some items didn't tick and tack properly. And data migration is one of the biggest, most difficult tasks we can do because we have so many records we had to deal with and so many different fields. Another one was the license requirement collection logic. responses to the workflow logic put users on a incorrect path. We have mainly corrected most of those, and then not directly tied to goals, but to our Secretary of State site, we were directing users to incorrect locations because for some reason, and they still haven't told me why, our outward facing website, not goals, but the sos.ga.gov site was reverting to old links. Even after we deleted them and those things, they kind of would just magically appear like ghosts and come back there and send people the wrong way. So we think we fixed it. And a week later they said, well, you didn't fix it. We did. We have a record of fixing it. We've seen it get fixed. We tested it and they kind of magically get back. So we're trying to figure out what's causing that. So we're basically now we're checking it daily to make sure that nobody's going to the wrong links. Now what's next? This is the goals rollout schedule. You can see on here today, we've got we're at the end of December. We are in testing for rollout number 2 already. And that will happen in Q1. That's the intention right now. So sometime in the first 3 months of the year. And then we have another rollout 3, which will be likely in Q2. That's kind of our internal goal right now. And we go to the next one. And you see what we do concurrently on this. We do testing, cutover work, and training all at the same time. And one of the things that requires is we didn't get extra budget for staff for any of this. So that means the same people who are analysts are the same people having to do testing on this. So we've tried to explain to both applicants and people seeking renewals, it may be a little bit slower than you like right now. And we would too. We're kind of trading off some pain right now for a long-term benefit and gain for everybody. And if I had more money, I could trade that off. I can trade money for time, but we ain't got no more money. So this is what we got to do right now. So that leads us to what's going to be in those rollouts, which is on the next to last page, which is in rollout 2, Athletic and Entertainment Commission. The Boxing Commission is what most people know that as. Architects and interior designers, conditioned air contractors, electrical contractors, low voltage contractors, plumbers, residential and general contractors, utility contractors, the professional counseling, social work, marriage and family therapy, psychology, speech pathologists and audiologists, foresters, geologists, landscape architects, chiropractors, dietitians, dispensing opticians, hearing aid dealers, dispensers, and optometry. That's in rollout 2, which we're looking second quarter, and first quarter, so probably February-ish. We want to see how the rest of this runs before we do that. Rollout 3, the professions we're looking at are cemeteries, music therapy, and nursing, and then the securities and charities would be the final thing we throw in there because it's not, they'll be using the system, but they are technically a separate division of the Secretary of State's office, but they'll be using the same software, the goals software. So the main thing I want to point out is we knew this first rollout would have challenges. It just so happened the physical therapists caught the brunt of it because they are the biggest one in a renewal period in that period of time. And then the first few days, they did have specific things where workflows didn't work properly. We communicated to them. We talked to the lobbyists from them, established additional communications we put it on the website itself and emailed applicants saying, and renewal applicants, this is a situation. And it's flowing fine now. We have over 4,000 physical therapists have renewed their licenses. About 2,300 are pending right now. Half of those are dry needling. I was just having a discussion about the rules around dry needling, as you only have to get the CE one time. But I think it could be interpretation of either the rule or law. I'm not sure right now that they have to upload it and it has to be reviewed every time, which of course makes no sense if you're only doing it one time, but it could be one of those quirks of the way the rule is written or the law is written, or maybe the way we're interpreting it. I don't know. As I sit here right now, we're gonna try to figure that out, but that's the biggest. About half of the ones that are pending are the dry needling requirement. So we have an issue specifically to used car parts and used car parts dealers. And this is one of the things we discussed with the vendor, that there had to be an ability to do multiple licenses on a single email. And that doesn't exist right now in the system. So if you are a used car part dealer, you have a used car part dealer license, and you probably have a used car parts dealer license at the same thing. And you have a location, and you historically have had them under 3. One of the other ones we run into right now is with private detectives. The agencies historically like having one email where they have their 100 people. That's not best practice. And we're having to work with them on a way that they can access everything through the email to look at their employees, but the employees can have they can work for multiple agencies. So as I said at the beginning, these are complex, and you're dealing with human beings who are dealing with a new system. But the long-term plan is this will be better because it should be easier for both the applicants, the licensees, and the analysts to do their work because of the amount of visibility that's in there and the level of communication that will be improved and automated, and cutting back on the manual systems, which means we can increase the time that the speed at which is done and hopefully lower the costs. As I mentioned at the beginning of this, we bring in about $38 million and the state allocates about $8.5 million for our work. And it's tight. I'm not going to lie. I mean, we have another budget ask for some more analysts. I compare us to Alabama. Alabama has a much more diffused system of licensing. They have individual boards who run everything themselves individually. They're a state of about a little more than half our size, and they spend $30 million on licensing for less than half the number of licensees. So we do get because of our scale and our ability to, scale costs, we get a good benefit for the taxpayers of Georgia. With all 38 million, we could do it really well. We don't want all 38 million, but if we could get to a somewhat higher level, that'd be great. One of the things we also implemented last year was in the law, y'all have allowed us to do a collection fee. So we put a $5 fee on every action, every renewal or application that's going to go towards the licensing costs of keeping the system going and paying for its upkeep. Because without the system, we can't license. And that way we don't have to go to y'all for extra dollars. And it's the user fee basically that allows us to do that. That's going to bring in about $1 million a year right now. But because the population of the state's increasing, the number of licenses we have are at record levels again. We're looking at probably doing 70,000 new licenses this year. And we're at nearly 550,000 licensees. So it's a giant scale, and our budget has essentially remained the same since Karen Handel was secretary. So it's been a minute, but we've also lost some things. Engineers are on their own now, and we only lost a little bit out of that, and they're having their own stuff done now, and they're still administratively attached to us. The main thing I want everybody to understand is we're trying to do this in the most cost-effective way to save money in the long run and get a better product and make it easier for individuals to get to work. One of the goals we have culturally internally is our job is to help the boards get to yes, not to find reasons to say no. Because, and one of the things we talk about when I talk to our staff and our executive directors and our analysts is you're facilitating the American dream for somebody. This is going to be providing a job or a career to somebody who's going to put food on the table and get them to where they need to be. We don't need to be the thing in the way of that. We need to be the thing facilitating that. And that's kind of our goal internally at the Secretary's office. And one of the things I know I've talked to Chairman Powell about before too, is we have this new Supreme Court ruling that basically says, if it's not safety and health, these rules may not apply. They may be unconstitutional. That was the reason lactation consultants was disallowed as a board, because it didn't say it was done properly that way. So we're having to review that, and we're discussing with the governor's office, what do we do about that? And I think the state Senate has their own study committee. We've had the Georgia Works Commission, which we have one more meeting in January, and we're doing a final report, hopefully to put forward legislation. Well, not hopefully. We're going to work with the members to put forward legislation in this upcoming legislature that can hopefully lower some of the barriers, make things easier. And this system will allow us to be more nimble in addressing those things. In the old system, if we wanted to change the words on a page, it was going to be, $4,000. I mean, this system allows us more flexibility. It's not free, but it's more flexibility and ability to work towards getting things done. And what we'd love to be able to do is get this to where I know internally is trying to manage this. I want an analyst for any one of these things to be able to go to any one of the boards and provide surge capacity when they need it, and try to get these systems as standardized as we can within the law as it's written and within the rules as they are written. It's not an easy task given 41 boards, given a title that probably started 80 years ago, that's been built on and built on and built on. I remember I was reading it the other day, and on page 4, the whole section about if you're traveling carnivals are under this. If you can't register with the county, you have to register with the professional licensing board for your traveling carnival and give us your insurance card. No one's done it since we've been here, but I'm surprised by that, because every time I turn around, there's some new thing the secretary is in charge of. So with that, I'll answer any questions you may have. We're here to help. I hope we have online, I'm not sure, Wanda Jaffe, who's the deputy director, and Sandy Barboza, who's our product manager, who have been overseeing the day-to-days of the build out of the system.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sterling. And if we omitted it, to those who are online, Mr. Sterling is the interim division director for the Office of the Secretary of State Professional Licensing Division.
Yes.
You did a very thorough review. You answered a lot of my questions in there. And so we have people online who may want to, first of all, we have anyone on the committee who wishes to ask any questions. You did such a good job.
I'm going to go then.
No. We did have someone else on the agenda. Is Miss Jaffe available?
Wanda.
Wanda?
Yeah.
She's online?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Okay,
Yes,
Wanda,
ma'am.
thank you. Wanda is the Deputy Division Director. Go ahead, Wanda.
Yes, ma'am. I don't have a full presentation like Gabe. I basically was just hoping to be able to answer some of your questions, if you had any. However, before I became the Deputy Division Director, I was the Renewal Coordinator, Renewal Licensing Director, as well as a regular licensing director. And I pulled the numbers looking at the renewals in 2021 for physical therapy. On December the 15th of 2021, 63% of physical therapists had applied for their renewal and were in the process of renewing. Okay. If you look at the numbers for this year, combining the number of licensees that have renewed, as well as those that are on hold for multiple reasons, it's not necessarily just dry needling, but there's continuing education holds, there's arrest holds, there's treatment holds, there's sanction holds, there's numerous reasons that could be involved. But if you take those two and combine it, we are at 52% of people that are in the process of renewed or renewing. So we're only down by 10%, maybe 11%, taking in the fact that we've changed systems, ran into multiple issues with getting people to understand the verification process of logging in. So I think we're down, yes, but I don't think we're down significantly that would, lead me to believe that there are some major issues. Now, I'm not saying that one person's issue is not major. It's major because to that person, because that impacts their careers and their livelihood. So I'm not saying that. Those are issues that we can resolve and can be completed and renewed. So right now we're only down by 11%. So I feel like we've done well with the staff that we have. Gabe slightly referred to it, but I will tell you that we have divisions. We call them sections in our office. We have sections, one section, PT section, they have 7 or 8 boards underneath them, and they have 5 employees. Let me say that again, 5 employees for 8 boards. Okay, they're not just doing PT, they're doing PT, OT, massage therapy. They're doing athletic trainers. They have a variety of duties. And on top of that, we're pulling them out saying, hey, we need you to test this system. Hey, we need you to help us resolve this issue. Hey, we need you to do this. But in the meanwhile, work and process applications and complete those renewals. So there's been a lot of internal pressures on the staff that we have. And that's just one section. We have multiple sections that cover 6 and 7 and 8 boards with only 5 people. So, and when I say 5, like Trades 3, they handle the private detectives, and they've had a major change in their renewal. In the past, a company could share their email with every licensee that they had hired underneath them. Now, was that particularly safe that you give out, that they receive your license information, the company, when it's your questions? You're supposed to be answering the question, have you been arrested or not? But you're allowing the company to do it. So there was some questions there. But even with him, with the amount of issues with the change of process, he only has 6 people, and that's including himself, the executive director. So he has 5 people. So he's got all these people in renewal, and 2/3 of his boards are in renewal right now. So, and on top of that, we're pulling them into meetings saying, how do we fix this? What is your rule on this? Because what's hanging us up is what's a rule for private detectives is not a rule for physical therapy. So we're trying to figure out how to get that rule to go into place where it satisfies both conditions. So that's where we've been really trying to focus our attention and get it so that it can resolve across the board and not just PT, but we've got to resolve it because what we do for PT may affect physical therapy negatively. May affect private detective negatively. So we're trying to make sure we do that balance.
And let me build on what she's saying. When you build logic into a system, our rules and regs aren't logical. So it's hard to square that circle, and we work on that every single day. And it's just one of the reasons I think we need to look at the code section and ways to rationalize and modernize it so it makes the work of the employees we do have a little bit easier, and for the licensees a little bit easier.
Thank you. I have a question, going back to Wanda. When you talked about the percentages, you mentioned 52%. Is that 52% of the total number of therapists in the state have applied and been successful with their relicensure?
So no, that's 52% of all physical therapists and physical therapist assistants that have started the renewal process and are in the process of being renewed. Completely renewed is, I believe, is at 37%, but that other remaining balance have holds on them for multiple reasons.
So if there's a clean applicant with no need for holds, how long should the process take?
2 hours.
2 hours?
Let's just say a day and be safe.
Yeah. Honestly, the way the system works is that if there is no holds placed on it, they've answered everything perfectly. They've provided all their documentation. It's an automatic process. My staff does not have to touch that.
Thank you for that. And I had another question about the CE broker. Would you be the one to answer that question about the CE broker system and how that interplays with the licensure renewals?
So I can answer some questions regarding CE broker. I have had multiple meetings with them, so I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
How do they interplay? Once you get your license renewed online, then you tell us the steps after that.
Okay, so we do not interface with CE broker. Those are two completely different systems right now. We are hoping to interface with them, so it makes it a lot faster. That is one of our initiatives in the future that we're looking at. But the way it works now is that if I get a license as a physical therapist, I'm going to go out to CE broker and I'm going to open an account with them. You can open an account with CE broker that's completely free. Okay. In that, it tells you what categories you have to get your continuing education for and when it's due. So it'll tell you your license expired on such and such date. You need to get these CEs done. Okay. When we don't check that throughout the year. We check renewals at renewal time. So when we get into renewals and we audit a certain percentage. So it's usually a small number because we don't want to hold up a lot of people. But we'll audit a very small, and when I say small, we're talking like 1%. Like 1 to 3% is a normal standard audit for us. If you think about 3% of 11,000, it's a few hundred. So, you know, you get a good sampling. So what we do is we go out there, we have our own logins into the CE broker system as an administrator, and we put that license number in there and check to see if they have their continuing education. If they have everything that they need, then we go back into our system, put it as a pass, and move it on. If they do not have it, then we send them a notice that says you haven't completed your continuing education. And different boards, different rules. There could be penalties. There could be fines for not completing their continuing education that's required by law. So.
And ma'am, I might want to chime in on this. We're examining doing a internal rule that would require all boards to use not necessarily CE broker, because we don't pick vendors that way, but a technology to allow the applicant to track their continuing education that we could then, as Ms. Jaffe was pointing out, interface with our system, and we wouldn't need to audit anymore because we have 100% audit.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that we're trying to work with our legal team right now to see how we can make happen now. I know there's been discussion about having some legislation. I think that would be a wonderful part of any reform legislation that we look at for the upcoming session.
And do you anticipate that will impact the remaining of the relicensures, particularly in physical therapy, because I'm familiar with that, doing this relicensure term, or would that be something for next?
For the
2 years.
PTs, for the PTs will be the next 1-2 years from now. But it depends on how quickly we can implement, because we do have to go through we've already had discussions with DOAS. If we pass this rule, we would still have to do, even though it's of no cost to the state or even to the applicant, we would have to go through some kind of, not a full bid process, but an analysis and comparison project with potential vendors on doing this. So that takes time. And then the integration into the system would also take time, because we want to make sure we do it right. But even doing it on the front end, this will help licensees a lot, because there's people asked, I'll give one little pitch about, I know CE broker and all of them kind of do this. They all have a free availability thing where somebody can go on and use it to upload their licenses or their education. They have 2 other concierge levels is where they get their money from. And one of them is, it will tell that CE broker or their competitors will reach out and say, hey, you need to get this many hours by this much time. We're tracking it for you. And the super concierge level is, here are the 8 courses you can go to. Here's a link to go to it to get it done. That's like the super concierge level. And I think that in and of itself will help licensees a lot. So they're not up against the wall. It also will help our side, because we don't have to do the 1 or 2 or 3% audits anymore, because we will have 100% audit. We'll know that everybody has their continuing education in there. That provides visibility on our side for that.
Thank you. Just one moment. I've got questions coming in on my text, but I don't know if they can. With the extension and with the repair of the glitch, the extension time still stands. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
In fact, in a preemptive fashion, we're going to push back the next set of renewals by 2 weeks on the front end to make sure we have all this stuff fixed to go before we go to the next set of renewals. And we're going to extend that one by 4 weeks to give everybody plenty of time if they run into any issues. And we're executing on that, and we'll be telling licensees that in the next renewal period, which starts in January coming up. So we're preemptively trying to get ahead of anybody's concerns and fears on this stuff. I mean, we probably could have still gotten everybody in on this time, but I think giving people that grace in this time of Christmas will be helpful to all the licensees out there and the applicants.
And for your next rollout for the next group,
Mhm.
you said you would begin perhaps in February,
Q1, yes.
Q1. When are their licenses due? I'm not that familiar with those other trades.
I'm going to defer to Wanda and Sandy on which renewals are in that section, because it's a moving target for all of these.
But
So
when are they due? If you roll out the application process, like for example, the therapist is due January 31st. So your second rollout of group, and we have the groups.
yeah,
If you started in first quarter, when is their deadline for getting their relicensures?
I would have to look at which ones actually go into renewal, because not everybody goes in at one time,
I see.
obviously. So
Okay.
we can get that answer to you though.
Okay, thank you.
Wanda, if you can get that answer to us, that'd be helpful.
In case
Yes.
We'll do it in writing later on, so
Okay.
we can verify.
the other trades, if
Mhm.
they were listening, that
Mhm.
was a question for a broader audience. And if there no one, is there anyone else online? No one wanting to ask questions? Because I certainly have had about 1,000 phone calls. But thank you for the fix that you have done. The other question was, and I know you went into great detail about the testing.
Mhm.
And so that was one of the questions as to how extensive did you test, knowing that there would be some glitches and still not given the best information on instructions. And then the other question was, is it possible that there will be like a YouTube or video attached to the information, the application for those who are different types of learners?
I think that there is in our change management a discussion about doing a training video on that. But I will say this too, all of our training manuals are changing based on the information we're learning from this. Like I said, there was 138,000 development hours and 16,000 testing hours. And we test every part of the product. And one of the things we also discovered, and you and I had a discussion about this earlier, was we were testing in a sandbox on a standard cloud system.
Mm-hmm.
And moved to the FedRAMP system, and they work slightly differently, is my understanding now. I am not technically smart enough to tell you why, but I'm just told that's how there were differences going to the more secure system in the way some of the things behaved. So we were learning from that. And like I said in the beginning, it's like a good war plan. It's all going to plan until you hit in the mouth. And we knew with thousands of people doing it, because customers and licensees will find all new ways to break things and find different work paths than you could ever do in testing. Because it's essentially you have thousands of testers at one time. So that's how we knew we were going to learn stuff. And we tried to set a level of expectation with the licensees that there were going to be slowdowns and there might be issues. And we're begging for patience and working with us because we're trying to make your lives easier in the long run, although it might suck for you for just this week.
Well, thank you for that. We also know that in the Senate report on occupational licensing, you indicated at that time that you have staffing issues, budget challenges. And so we can appreciate that and just keep doing what you can to be able to fully staff those positions, workforce development in the licensure department itself, so that we can better serve our our professionals that need to be accessing the system.
We are essentially fully staffed. There's always going to be some turnover, and we are into overtime hours now, which we're having to cut back on because we just have no more dollars to use for overtime to get these things done. And it's a challenge. Our people work hard and they are war slap out. I'm about to have to direct somebody to take a vacation soon because they're going to break. So it's this is the reality of rolling out a new system. We will get through it. Our people are dedicated to it. They're excited about it, and we will get there. But we do have budget challenges every year, and we do have personnel challenges. It's just difficult. We are located in Macon. We hold on to people for periods of time. They move on. As you know, state jobs, I know that the governor's given us the $1,000 bonus, which we're appreciative for retention, which will be a big help to our people who are making $35,000. That's a significant number, but it's difficult to compete in the marketplace right now even with the raises we've gotten. It's hard to get quality people at these kind of rates. It takes dedication to do that, and our analysts are dedicated people.
Well, we appreciate what you're doing. And are there any other questions? Let's see, what number?
And for the update here, I was curious, would you repeat what you said about the Supreme Court ruling that some licenses, if they don't have to do with public health and safety, shouldn't be required? Is that what I understood? And also what you said about possible legislation about that?
Well, there's two. The main thing that came out, there was the lactation consultant. You may remember that passed. I want to say the secretary was still, it was 2017 or 18, I believe, is when it passed. There was a lawsuit immediately, basically. So while we had that board, we didn't do any enforcement on it during the case. Supreme Court came out, and we can get you some more. I'm not the lawyer, so I'm going to give you the layman's terms about this. It essentially said, we don't find any health or safety rationale for this license. Therefore, it's unconstitutional in the state constitution, because those are the only reasons you can really have a license. And we've had discussions now internally and some with the governor's office. Basically, we need to review, are there rules and are there laws that are now that this particular Supreme Court decision may call into question. I would say that when they were talking about lactation consultants, they were looking for health and safety specifically. There's another reasons to license, which is a fiduciary and financial investigatory responsibility, like with cemeteries and long-term care and things like that. That would be a third leg of the stool. Things health, safety, and financial, malfeasance needs to be reviewed. But anything that we do, we would recommend in any reform would have that as the basis, knowing the Supreme Court has now given us a direction that, and even in the Georgia Works Commission, we said, there's some people that want to throw all licenses out. That's not the responsible thing to do because our health and safety concerns for Georgians. But we don't want to have unnecessary goals for entry for people to get into it. Like the lactation consultant was specifically, this was something that women with not a lot of education who were poor could get into this work. And this became a big barrier for them. And that was the reason the lawsuit came about. And what we want to do is find ways to get these barriers out of the way while still protecting the health and safety, but rules that aren't promulgated for those purposes. There's a question of whether they can be applied or not. So this is where lawyers will get into figuring it out, and will obviously require, I think, some legislative attention at some point, knowing that this is the Supreme Court's position on how licensing has to work.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman Chairman Powell.
Thank you, Representative Sterling. I'd like to ask a couple of questions, and I'm going to make a couple of comments. How many boards do y'all oversee right now?
41.
And do you know how many licensees?
I think it's five. Last I checked, it's 560 something thousand. And that changes because people leave, they don't renew, they're renewing. So it's in that range. Wanda, is that about right?
Yes, that is right. It's about 560 something. I'd have to look at it. I think it was like 567, but I can double check.
And that'll change, like I said, daily because people leave, people come in.
Right.
So it's around that number.
Yeah, and I'm going to speak from a historical perspective of 34 years here. My first assignment was on the Old House Industry Committee. My first chairmanship was over professional licensing. And one of the things that I saw back 30-something years ago is that we have a failure in the system. One is the Secretary of State's office is remanded and authorized by law to handle there would be the depository of all of these various and sundry boards and licensees and all of that. Now, you gave me a figure, or you gave us a figure early on. There's about $38 million generated in license fees.
Yes, sir.
Right now annually. I hadn't kept up with it over the years, but that's gone up substantially. I know 34 years ago, it was like 10 or 12 million. And we have never, the legislature, nor the governor's budget proposal, nor the legislature has ever budgeted the appropriate amount of money that needs to be budgeted to the Secretary of State's office. Now, there's a little bit more room for criticism. I'm not sure that we ever had a Secretary of State that goes back for years that's ever asked and made a case for how much money they need. You've got some awful good employees. I deal with LaTrenda Jones. And I can't tell you a better state employee when it comes to me having to deal with constituent requests on licensees that fall between the cracks and they go overboard to try to do whatever. Y'all got a great division over to Trust Division. I've been working with them on some cemetery issues that I'm having up my way. Y'all got what you've got is good folks right now, but they're so stretched out that they can't get the work done in a more hasty manner, for the no better word. And it's because that y'all have been underfunded. Y'all bring in money. People want to know why we have Georgia, we're doing good running the show, but we've got a lot of extra surplus money. Well, my question that people need to know, why, if you're raising 38 and you're spending, do we know how much your budget is? How much do y'all, can y'all give us a pen more on how
It's about
much?
8.5.
How much?
About 8.5 of state dollars.
8.5.
Mhm.
Well, then that's the best I can tell. That's pretty close to a $30 million gap between the money, the revenue that comes in and what's being spent. And I think that perhaps that it needs to be in the licensees, perhaps maybe they need to start sending a message to legislators and powers that be to appropriately fund the licensing divisions of the Secretary of State's office. Albeit this ain't got nothing to do with the elections division. I'm talking about professional licensing.
You will
But-
not
and
get an
that's for
argument
the-
from me, sir.
And that's for the benefit of all them people out there in TV land that are listening to this. So, that's just a take, but y'all got a lot of employees that need to be thanked for what they do.
They do, sir.
And when I mentioned LaTrenda Jones, hey, top dollar.
Well, we appreciate that, sir. And we have asked for additional investigators and inspectors. We have asked for additional analysts. And we got some we got a few in last year's budget, but it was also cut down from in the original budget was there and even the governor's budget. And there's actually a law on the books that says that the license fee should match the costs for putting the license out. Now, that would be impossible license by license. I mean, you have people, we would be charging $30,000 for a librarian license if that was the case. But by amalgamating these licenses together, I think we could receive more dollars in without fundamentally affecting the bottom line of the state of Georgia to allow us to do our work appropriately. We've asked for some more analysts this time to basically get us back to where we were before. And we want to be judicious with our dollars, but you will not get an argument from me that this is an underfunded section. Hopefully, when we get done with the goal system, it will allow for more efficiencies so we can squeeze more use out of the dollars that we have. But we need bodies at the end of the day to process some of these things in a timely fashion, investigate in a timely fashion. We can't even inspect all the locations we have once every 4 years with the inspectors that we have. So you will not get an argument from us that we would be better, the people of Georgia would be better served, our office would be better served, and you and your colleagues would be better served by getting less phone calls from your constituents about issues if we had a bit more funding on these fronts.
Thank you. We
sir.
look forward to an increase in requests through the appropriations process to meet the needs of the division, because it's certainly some of the reports that I got, people on the phone, long waits, so et cetera. So thank you for the work that you're doing, and thank you for putting in an additional request for what you need, and then we'll see how the process goes.
Well, thank you all very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much. We have next Miss Daria Shaw from the American Physical Therapy Association of Georgia. She's the president of the association. Miss Daria, won't you come? You may sit either at the table or stand at the podium. Sure you have something to share with us today. And the lobbyist is out for the holiday, Lauren Polo.
Good morning to the members of the ad hoc subcommittee. Thank you for inviting me to join you today. I'm Dara Shaw, a doctor of physical therapy and the president of the American Physical Therapy Association, Georgia chapter. We greatly appreciate the subcommittee convening a meeting to discuss the implementation of goals, the Georgia Online Application Licensing System. As an aside, I also appreciate seeing two physical therapists on the subcommittee. We're fortunate to have colleagues in the industry within legislature. So thank you, Representative Bennett, for being here. So just to get into the issue at hand, I'll provide a brief timeline of events regarding obtaining licensure and speaking more on the user experience that Gabe mentioned as well. The renewal process went live in October for PTs and PTAs with the goal system. A PT seeking a renewal must have their renewal completed by December 31st of each year to continue practicing on January 1st. This impacts the ability to work and provide continuity of care for our patients. This does not include our new grads, who will typically apply and begin application for an initial license in June, for those taking the National Physical Therapy exam in July. There's also a cohort that applies in September who plans to take the exam in October. Mid-October, I began to receive multiple emails and calls reporting that the system was reporting erroneous information, such as licenses were lapsed, which, let me remind you, that poses a huge threat to the practitioner and violates the law. And there was not a license under their name. So there was no licenses to be had to be seen if you were searching, and that poses a huge threat. It goes without saying that we greatly value the work of the state board does for our profession. It felt through the goals implementation, the state board wasn't receiving updated guidance from the Secretary of State's office. So we could not feed that information back to our members. So we were sort of in limbo for a while there because we were not getting any information to actually disseminate to our members. Those rumblings turned into several hundred calls, emails demanding guidance for additional information from PTs and PTAs in the field. In response, APTA Georgia began formal outreach to the Secretary of State's office on November 17th, after numerous discussions with the state board. We wrote to express our association's concern over the goals implementation timeline and report on the glitches we were experiencing. While ultimately, this process will become streamlined, I'm being optimistic and positive of that over time. The implementation has been rocky, and we know some challenges will continue to lie ahead. As a result, many PTs and PTAs panicked about receiving their licensure renewals in time this year. And honestly, I don't blame them. I'm one of them. For most PTs, PTAs, not having a renewed license means they cannot see patients. They cannot work. They cannot bill insurance. They cannot provide the care that their patients continue to need if they don't receive a license by January 1st. After our go live, the functionality and integrity of the application process quickly came into question. We perceive this is due to the hundreds of inquiries from frustrated licensees. Licensees couldn't get on the phone or figure out how to work through random errors that they were receiving. For those that have a previously approved dry needling sub-license, the renewals have a turnaround of 30 days minimum. Those licensees are receiving an email indicating their licensure renewal is pending due to verification of dry needling continuing education, which should not even be required for someone who already has a dry needling sub-license with continuing education verified in a previous renewal year. That is not something that we have to continue to take every year. We will circle back on later on some suggestions we have for that. We advocated for and were given an extension, thank you for that, with the goals system for 30 additional days. But it did become our job to educate our members and non-members practicing in Georgia. APTA Georgia has been providing weekly memos with common mistakes or errors just gathered from random members reporting those errors so that we can help mitigate the calls that the board is receiving. It did not feel as though any information was being pushed out through the SOS office or the state board. While we are always happy to do our part, we feel more direct communication from the secretary's office or the state board with such a seismic change in systems is necessary. Ultimately, the members were expecting to hear directly from the office with a notification, fax, or something similar to help navigate the errors that were happening since October, which continued to improve through November, where we're still handling some different errors that are going across, and we're at December 20th now. If a member gets through to speak to someone about their pending application, they are sometimes told information that another PTA or PT is told is contrary. For example, to use a specific browser, the website will be less buggy. To log back in the next day, and it'll work. Also, some members were told to use their middle name as their first name when we're verifying their account in goals because that worked for someone else. So those errors are continuing to occur because of the migration of some of the systems, but we can't get a hold of anyone to tell us like, oh, try to use your middle name as your first name or your first name as your last name to try to verify your account. The lack of uniform guidance has been frustrating as we're all told different things. And most of those suggestions are sometimes helpful and sometimes not. It is apparent that the state board has tried to be helpful, but without actual guidance and permission to share it from the Secretary of State's office, information has been limited. Goals has been tested on all browsers, as it turns out, but many of our members were told to use one specific browser from a staff member in the Professional Licensing Board office. Even now, we have licensees saying that Chrome doesn't work, but Edge works. We can cut through the rumor mill by issuing guidance directly from the Secretary of State's office. We are encouraged to see the numbers continue to climb. As of Monday, we were told 3,962 licensees had been approved and 2,349 were pending a response, which 1,122 are pending verification of dry needling education. So if I do the math, it's about 39% that are approved and that are pending because of some hold. Those who entered their information into the system later have been receiving faster response times as the workflows have been corrected. We are unclear if the extension will adequately apply to those billing Medicaid, and we have attempted to contact the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid without hearing back. CAQH credentialing, which governs re-credentialing for most private insurance, requires an updated license. Luckily, we were able to get in touch with them and they can accept a joint rule from the SOS office. Once again, we initiated that discussion as an association for them to perform an update in their system. It has been on us to predict what the worst impact could be on our profession and will be, and to ameliorate it by taking many steps on our end to update providers, PTs, insurances, credentialing bodies to prevent a steep drop-off in employment and access to services for our patients. As of today, some licensees are currently listed as on hold, and those licensees have not received any further information about the delay or timeline. As a reminder, I'm just representing PTs and PTAs. There are many other professionals that are going through the same process as we are. Now I want to move on to talking about those trying to move to Georgia. While the bulk of our remarks today will focus on the renewals and then dry needling, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out how cumbersome the process has been for those moving to Georgia. We have an example of one applicant who waited over 3 months, pushed back her start date at her job by over 5 weeks because she was unable to receive a response. She began the process in August to get all needed documentation for application for obtaining a license. She was informed by the licensing board on September 13th that all information was received and last step was verification from a licensing analyst. She called from September 13th to October 25th, requesting an update and continued to receive the same response. And they could not escalate further because she was told she had not passed the 25 business days to escalate. She was able to get in touch with someone on November 9th in the Professional Licensing Board office, stating that application was received, but there was no date attached. So she was not in queue to be reviewed by the analyst. Let me remind you that she completed the application on September 13th and was told she needed no other information. When she contacted me to finally say, I cannot move to the state of Georgia and work if I cannot get my license at this point. It has become cumbersome to obtain a physical therapy license in the state of Georgia, to the point where this provider was going to lose her job that she committed to in the state of Georgia and moved to provide care for the pediatric population in Georgia. Next, I'll move on to dry needling. While we are seeing numbers improve significantly since we initiated these discussions, those seeking the dry needling CE are experiencing the highest volume of wait times. We suggest the committee consider supporting legislation that removes the secondary licensure through the renewal process, which would eliminate another barrier and expedite licensure process. It is the responsibility of any physical therapist who plans to use dry needling in their practice to stay current with their continuing education requirements. And let me remind you, those continuing education requirements are only required one time. They are not required to continue to renew every year or every other year. You only have to take the courses one time. We would like to propose a re-examination of the requirement of a sublicense for an intervention that is within the physical therapist's scope of practice, as no other intervention in our Practice Act requires a sublicense. Additionally, other disciplines are allowed in Georgia to perform dry needling with no such requirement. We would expect that every licensee would be responsible for maintaining their paperwork and attest with their licensure renewal that they have taken the appropriate coursework. Further, it is our expectation that any physical therapist would be ready to furnish their paperwork for the board at any time during an audit. We fully support the requirement, but not the administrative burden of uploading and waiting for additional secondary approval on top of their licensure approval. APTA Georgia contends that it's unusual to require a separate approval process for an intervention contained in our Practice Act. APTA Georgia supports a uniform certification process for members practicing in Georgia, as well as those practitioners who perform dry needling by means of the compact privileges. In conclusion, we hope our comments are taken in the spirit that they are given. We are not here to sound critical, but to represent the concerns expressed by our members throughout the last 6 weeks. We believe that other professions will experience similar hiccups with the new system throughout their rollout, and our hope is by sharing our experience, we can prevent some of those headaches for the professional licensing board and for those enrollees. Gabe Sterling and Jordan Futch have been working behind the scenes to make a lot of this happen and to work on an extension. We are grateful for the time and attention that has been placed on this, but know we need to collaborate to manage the challenges that lie ahead. We hope that once renewals are over, we can work with the Secretary of State's office to focus on those moving to Georgia and how we plan to ready these same systems for our new graduates during the same year. Open for any questions.
Committee, any questions? Ms. Shaw, you have given us a thorough explanation of the experiences by your members. And I want to commend you for reaching out to the Secretary of State's office and encourage you and Mr. Sterling to continue to collaborate on some of those other suggestions that may help expedite and get patients seen in Georgia. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do we have with us also, is Andy Grubbs here? No?
Yes,
And
ma'am. I'm on Zoom.
oh, he's online. Hi, Andy. How are you?
I am great. How's everybody doing?
We are grateful. Go right ahead.
So I don't have as much detail. Athletic trainers are not going through a renewal period right now. So we're not having the hiccups that the PTs and the PTAs are having. I would like to take this opportunity just to kind of bring to light things that have already been discussed, but the wait times and the lack of communication are the biggest concerns that my members bring.
Mr. Grubbs, are you representing the athletic trainers, did you say?
Yes, ma'am. The Georgia Athletic Trainers Association.
Okay, go right ahead.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, that's really the main focus of the phone calls and the emails and the text messages that I receive from our membership is the extended wait times and the lack of communication. So as this system gets all the bugs worked out, that's what we hope to see. And I think what everybody hopes to see is this be a very quick and streamlined process. So we're more than willing and able to kind of help as this process goes along when our renewal period starts this coming summer in 2024.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. Grubbs? Hearing none, I apologize. I skipped over Ms. Barboza, Systems and Process Improvement Project Manager. Okay. Ms. Sandy Barboza,
Yes, I'm here.
there you are. Welcome.
Thank you. My name, as you said, Sandy Barboza. I am over the project of continuing to find improvements and efficiencies in our systems. We do acknowledge that we have had some major issues that have created problems simply from the verification standpoint, and we are working diligently to get that resolved. It was a result of data that was transferred from one system to another where there were multiple contacts, multiple pieces of information, and they did not combine properly. So when people went online and tried to verify their accounts, it was picking up the wrong information and not matching them. We have a major project in place right now to get that resolved, which is one of the reasons we've asked to move out any additional renewals until such time that we know that that is working, because we just cannot have the same issues again going forward with another renewal. Though we do apologize to the people that have been affected by this, please know that everybody is working very hard to get that resolved so it doesn't continue in the future. We have had countless hours of work by all of our staff members, as you have heard, who are very short-staffed, bringing in all executive directors, analysts, on any level to try to identify the problems that each licensee has, their unique requirements for their licenses, trying to make sure that the programs could be set up properly and have the correct response as it's going through a guided flow, that they can just move on to the next question, or what does really stop them? What have you not qualified for to keep moving? We find that there is a lot of the challenges of trying to get all the different boards with all of their unique rules and regulations, as Gabe said, to move within the new system, to make sure that they are being answered properly and that we have the correct questions and the correct answer to it. We are trying to use the Georgia website as the best place for receiving information. We are putting up how-to guides. Our executive directors have gone through them, reviewed them, updated them, tried to make sure that they are matching the new system, to try to make sure that information is out there. I do believe, and Wanda can speak to this, that information was sent out to schools and associations telling them of the new system coming. I don't know that we provided all the information that was needed to be able to help here, but I am thankful to hear what we are missing and have been taking some notes here to help improve that for the next rollout as well, to make sure information is getting out there. So thank you very much for the comments on the communications. I don't know what other, Gabe has provided you the majority of the information that would be under my responsibility of what's been happening, the training hours, etc. And if anybody has any questions that I could answer directly, I'll be happy to do that.
Thank you, Ms. Barboza. Mr. Sterling, I'm going to ask if you would come back to the table, please, because I do have a question about the verification issues, which seem to be a technical issue,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
how Ms. Barboza seems to think that they are still unresolved. So how do the verification issues impact the therapists who are being relicensed at this time?
Well, it's going to depend on the individual therapist, and Sandy can answer it much more plainly than I can. But this was a data migration issue I was referring to before, where essentially looking at Excel spreadsheet, columns don't line up right.
Mhm.
This is the easiest way to explain it. So Sandy, do you have any better it's hard to test all the way through percentage wise who might still be affected in the PT renewal side.
Or any other trades that are in the process
We'll
if there's
start
a
with-
verification issue.
It's easy to start on a minor one and spread out from there if we can do that.
To give you a percentage of that, I'm not comfortable with doing that. I would rather have an opportunity to look at the numbers and present you with some correct numbers. But we have a process in place right now where we have gone through the records and identified how many of these may look like they have duplicate records, which is causing verification issues and need to be fixed immediately. Wanda and I and our system admin have been provided the information that we need to go through and verify which processes to use to make sure that these don't continue to have verification issues going forward, and get that in place, as we expect to have that resolved here. I believe there was no later than the last week of December to have all of them resolved.
So we can get you a more specific answer, and hopefully we'll have it all resolved before the beginning of the year, and even including Christmas and New Year's. But what y'all are getting to see here is how the sausage gets made. This is the reality of any new software rollout. And unfortunately, PT was the biggest one, and they caught the most flack, unfortunately, but they've handled it with aplomb. And like Miss Jaffe pointed out earlier, we were at 61% at this same point of renewals in 2021, and we're at 52% of people having filed so far. Now, the dry needling thing, I'm hoping it's a rule that I can do a joint secretary rule and get rid of it, but I can't say that right now, but we will work diligently to get those pushed through as well. And I'm glad we had this meeting. It allows us to take more notes and learn more about the issues that y'all are hearing from and that what our licensees are hearing from. So we'll try to get you any other questions answered. And if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to email us. We'll get you answers as quickly as we can while we continue to diligently roll out this system to make it easier in the long run for licensees in Georgia.
Thank you. I have one question for Ms. Barboza. For those applicants, licensees who are in the process of renewal, and on your side, you're seeing verification issues, have they been communicated back as to why there's a delay, or they're just out there wondering what's going on?
There has been a lot of communication with people that have called in. Any types of things that come through the call center, email, it goes directly to the department, and the analysts are responding as quickly as they can, as well as call center providing whatever information they can. And we have also put together a communication that we are working on that will be going out as soon as we feel comfortable that the verification issue itself is resolved. We don't want to send it now. It's going to go to the wrong place. People are going to try to log in the wrong area. So as soon as that correction is complete, we already have a communication that's going to be going to all of these licensees that are coming up for renewals and are in process right now trying to get online. And we expect that will greatly help any issues that we're having going forward.
And the reason Ms. Barboza is saying that is we don't want to send communication saying, hey, it's fixed, and then there's still a percentage of them that it's not. That's what we're trying to get to. And none of this is going to be perfect right now, but we're trying to do the best we can with the limited staff to get to the individual ones, because the vast majority are getting through now since the initial slowdown in the beginning of the process in October and early November.
I want to commend you and your staff for the great work that you have done, but understanding also with the remaining glitches in the communication has been a challenge. I'm hearing that wait time to the call center, and we know we've talked about staffing challenges, is running up to about 3 weeks. So again, that increases the frustration and the calls that we're getting. You've done a great job with the majority of them, but that small population of providers who are being held up, and they don't know why their application is being held up. So just want to have you, I know you're cognizant of it. And Ms. Barboza, I want to thank you for raising that and letting us know that that still is an issue. And so communication is going to be key. I don't have a solution. I just, if I could get you the staffing that you need right now, I would wave my magic wand and do that. But some type of automatic response maybe could be built into the system so that people are not just wondering what's going on.
Well, right now,
Well, we have,
go
I'm so
ahead.
sorry, Gabe.
No, you go ahead, Sandy.
We do have multiple automatic notifications built into the system as things go through the different steps, like the notice that goes out that tells them your application for renewal has been put on hold and here's why. And we have these notices all set up to go out automatically to help people understand that your renewal time is getting closer. You're going to, you've got 30 days left to renew, and things, all kinds of automatic notifications have been built into this system. And now applicants, once they go online, they can see their own records and see what notifications have been sent out as well. If they haven't received something, it's in their file and they can actually see it where they couldn't in the past.
Sandy said that better than I could. One other thing we did, we rearranged our call center to allow an escalation inside of PLB. So specially trained people in the call center to deal with these kind of things. Now, the problem is we are at our target on call centers to have about a 3% abandon rate, which is where they kind of give up and hang up the phone. And regular PLB, we're at 16, and the escalation, we're at 20 because the volume is just too high. We don't have enough people to deal with it right now. But we do have a callback feature. So not sitting on hold. They will get a call back a certain amount of time. We do cut it off around 4:30. So our callers were staying until 6 o'clock at night. So we're trying to cut it off a little bit earlier. And we understand it's frustrating, but as we pointed out, we don't have the bodies. Most of these people having issues are inside a very specific bucket. The majority of people now who are renewing it's going through fine. So I would call it an 80% is going through okay right now. 20% are having some kind of issues, maybe even less than that. I'm just spitballing to give you a basic scale of where we're at. And we continue to work with, as I was discussing with you earlier, every day I send where we are on PT licensing to their lobbyist, who then shares it immediately with her. And they know exactly what's happening. We're trying to be as open as we can, as transparent. And we said from the beginning, and we tried to tell our licensees, there's going to be issues. And, at some point, like it's going to work. We don't want anybody to be held up for this. And we've worked with the insurers. We worked with, we did change the licenses themselves. So when they print their palm cards, which is the proof of their license, it now says renewal will be at the end of January of 24. So that was a big fix we're able to implement pretty quickly. So we've done everything we can to make sure that works. But overall, in my old business world, I would call this, going to give it what I would normally call a B for the rollout so far, because the majority of people who come in are fine. And they don't call and say, hey, Representative, it all went great. Just want to let you know. That's not normally what happens. You get the ones that have the problems they're going to call, and that's what we get. So
Actually, I did get one that said, when I gave
Oh, good.
information about the notice, they said, well, we're getting more successes now.
Good.
One last question for me. Is there, in addition to the call center, is there an email option where people can email you and get responses?
Sandy, on that one?
Yes, we have the SOS contact that we're getting emails in regularly that go directly either to myself or our system admin, and also the executive directors all get these emails in and then try to handle them appropriately with their staff.
Then we love that with our correspondence. We track that on how many days that takes too. But again, the volume is going to be high. We knew it would be, and we try to prepare people, but everyone wants their stuff done now, and I understand the frustration with that.
I thank you. I think this meeting has been positive and productive and very informative and encouraging as people enter into the holidays. And any final closing remarks? Oh, wait. Sorry, where am I going? Right there. Okay.
How many employees do you have in Macon?
I don't want to say the wrong number to you. It's going to be 100 and something, but I can give you exact number from the personnel projection report when I get back to the office.
I'm just curious. Do they all come into the office now physically, or do you have some that work remotely?
I leave it down to the executive directors. I did try to pull everybody back in, but I saw productivity fall through the floor. So I said, okay, executive directors, you figure out when you need to get them in. And since we can track the volume, it's been working pretty good to allow them to make their decisions on when and where they do it. But we can see when they're logging in, we can see when they're touching licenses, we can see when they're issuing licenses. So the work output actually has increased as we've allowed more flexibility on that front.
So I'm assuming you have or could pretty quickly come up with an idea of the additional personnel needed to take care of some of the delays and so forth that we're having.
We could, yeah. And I've got part of that in our ask, in the current budget ask, but I guess we've been so sort of conditioned to not think that the House and Senate are Santa Claus. So we try to be as judicious as we can with what we absolutely need versus what would get us to a perfect place.
Mhm. Well, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And we have one last, Ms. Jaffe, like to make a remark, comment?
Yes, I just wanted to comment a couple of things. When we were talking about verification glitches, one thing I want you to realize, even though Gabe said we have approximately 560,000 licenses, active licensees, we actually manage 1.2 million licenses because we have to migrate over all of their information if they want to reinstate a license, if they want to reactivate a license. So it's not just, the 560 active licensees, but we had to migrate millions of records over to the new system. And in regards to the verification, out of 162,000 contacts, over 10,000 did not even have email address records on us. That's information that they gave us. They also did not have social security numbers. For a long time, we did not require social security numbers. So we're missing all of that information. It's kind of hard to communicate with people when you don't have the information that you need to reach out to them. We also have the name discrepancy that someone mentioned earlier. Let me just explain it this way. We had people back in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. They applied for their license in their nickname or their middle name. But when we brought over the records, we brought it over that, and they're trying to verify by their first and last name, which is not the name of the record. Or they put on their handwritten application, my name is Wanda Marie, and my last name is Jaffe, when actually my name is Wanda, first name, middle name, Marie, Jaffe, last name. But they wrote Wanda Marie under the first name spot on the application, so we entered the name in IMLO in the legacy system as Wanda Marie, because that's what they wrote in their application. So now they're coming in and trying to verify their name as Wanda Jaffe, but in the old system they had it as Wanda Marie Jaffe. So that's where some of the discrepancies is coming from, is the old data on how the licensees originally applied, how it was written on the applications, and how it translated over. So those are some of the verification glitches that we are trying to work past. But if it was just straight first name, last name, and that has been easy to fix. One of the other verification issues, and I just wanted to touch on this right quick, was the verification of misinformation. Like when they tried to verify their name, it came back saying they had no license on file. The problem with that was that not only could it be a name mismatch, but maybe they had 2 licenses and they verified one license with this email address. So when they tried to verify it again, you could only verify that email address one time. That's one of the issues that we're trying to rectify now, is so that they can use the same email no matter how many licenses they have. So that's the glitch that we're working on, but we can get them in the system. We just have to update their email address. So those are some of the things I wanted to address that you had asked earlier about some of the verification issues. I would say out of the 9 or 10 serious verification issues that we've had, we've rectified probably about 8 of them. We're just working on that small percentage to get those few last little pieces over the hump. As far as the email communication, I know you asked for an email communication. Let me just tell you that before we rolled out live, my emails, I was averaging about 100 to 120 emails, that I took care of daily. Over the last 3 months, my emails have gotten up to 1,900. It's really hard to respond to every single email. Like, I'm still going back and going, okay, I still got to handle these emails from September that has gotten to me, because it is just so overwhelming with the emails. So, and I understand the association's getting overwhelmed. I'm the deputy director. I'm not even in PT world. I can only imagine what my executive director and my staff members are getting on a daily basis on emails. So it's not the lack of wanting to communicate, it is the lack of time and the lack of resources to communicate. We do have auto communications that's going out of the gold system. I have sent communications out to every licensee before we went live to let them know that we were going live. It's just hard to give an email or a communication that states every possible scenario that they could run into, and this is the fix. We're trying to fix them and then we have a list of the call center that's getting information. And as we fix them as we can, we go out there, we contact them back and say, okay, we've got you, you're done, you can go online and here, I'll walk you through it. So we are actively trying to assist these licensees in this process.
Ms. Jaffe, I want to thank you, Mrs. Sterling. I want to thank you. It's obvious to us now based on the testimony today that your staff is doing a Herculean job with not much to work with. And so we understand, the associations understand, and we're going to continue to advocate for your successful venture across the finish line so that by January the 31st, all of these glitches will be worked out. And then for your rollout of 2 and 3, they will be smooth sailing as a result of allowing the input from these associations. We have with us Representative Misha Maynard, who has come in. And Representative Maynard, if you would just give 1 minute or just a comment or remark, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming down. I want to just on the same sentiment that Representative Bennett said, that a lot of the people that contacted me for issues have thus since said their issues have been resolved. So we're happy that they're able to proceed with renewing their license. My only suggestion, I was listening the entire time, my only suggestion would be at the very beginning, when you realize you have an issue, be proactive and send out something immediately to say, you know what, we have a glitch in the system. Please be patient with this, do that right away. And then for emails, we get so many emails ourselves. So since you have a glitch in the system, it might be good to have an automatic response of, we will get back to you within such amount of days. We do know that there is a problem, X, Y, and Z. I think when you're dealing with, I have a license, I'm a physical therapist. So I think when you're dealing with professionals that this is their livelihood, being proactive takes away a lot of the challenges up front. But thank you for resolving everything that you have done.
Thank you. How is your office move going?
Yeah, the memo came. Thank you so much. I want to recognize Stan Jones, who's here representing the speech and language pathologist as well, longtime friend there. All right. If there are no further comments to come before this committee, I want to thank Mr. Chairman Alan Powell and Elizabeth Apley. And I want to recognize Elizabeth Apley. Who are you representing? Marriage and family therapist. I want to thank once again my chairman, Mr. Alan Powell, my vice chairman, Dale Washburn, my colleague, Misha Maynard, and the staff who have just been absolutely wonderful, and to all of you who have given me this marvelous opportunity. Thank you so much and happy holidays.
Merry Christmas.